I run in my neighborhood 4 times a week, oftentimes in the morning before the sun rises. On May 6th, I laced up my shoes for another morning run. And for the first time in my life, there was a fear associated with the tying of my shoes. The night before, I watched the horrific video of Ahmaud Arbery getting shot and killed. The peace that always came with my morning run was replaced with a new fear. A fear that a black man went on a run in 2020 and he didn't make it back home. Man, I appreciate you. Appreciate you being willing to leverage your gift, your team to help us bring this to light. That's what it's all about.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man. Welcome. This is Coffee Chat with a Black colleague, and my name is Nosa Eguae. I believe that we're more apt to have conversations on Facebook with people from our high school that, quite frankly, we probably haven't seen in 20 years, than our colleagues that we see 5 days a week. We are living in incredible times. This is a generational defining moment that is amongst us. And I know that the conversations are tough. The conversations of race, the conversations of social injustice, the conversations around systemic oppression are not easy. They bring with it discomfort. But we should have the conversations anyway. The goal behind this is to help facilitate those conversations, to help increase the dialogue. So I want to start with actionable steps. I want to introduce new thought. I want to share my story so we can continue to move forward and so we can continue to do what we would do in business anyway. In times of discomfort, there's courage. And where there's courage in business, it gives us the opportunity to yield our best results. Can we fail? Of course. But we fail fast and we fail forward. Bringing about social change is no different. This is a generational defining moment. So what's our role? Each and every one of us has one. It's not the time for us to look and say, well, this is something that somebody else can handle. As leaders, as business professionals, what can we do to help ensure that this country is more equitable and better for our kids and their kids? The social unrest that ensued after the dehumanizing death of George Floyd has brought along with it the opportunity for us to break down systemic strongholds. So as we move forward in this conversation, as we move forward in this work, I'd like to offer up an actionable solution for us to continue to figure out how we can bring forth the change. So I would like to start very simply breaking down 2 myths, answering 1 question, and giving us a solution to move ahead together. Myth number 1, Nosa. There's this negative connotation around the word privilege. And quite frankly, I don't want any part of it. To be able to pick and choose whether we have privilege is privilege. I fundamentally don't believe that we can leverage something we do not think we have. So let's dispel privilege. Privilege is bad when it is not used and leveraged for the people that do not have it. As we move forward, identify your privilege. Own it. and figure out how you can leverage it for the people that don't have it. There is power in privilege. For me personally, I have my privileges. As a Nigerian American, first generation, upwardly mobile Black professional and man, I have privileges. As I educated myself in understanding the disparities that existed in this country, and the institutions of racism and poverty that were built in the 40s, in the 50s, when GIs, military veterans, came back to this country after fighting overseas in World War II. And the GI Bill that was created to ensure that these men and women that served our country were going to be able to be a part of the American dream. 3.2 million mortgages were written. 1% of the $33 billion that were given to veterans backed by the VA were given to African American veterans. And as I think back on the early 1980s, when my mother and my father came to this country from Nigeria, given the opportunity to study in this incredible country because of the 1965 Immigration Act, I understand that if it wasn't for the 1964 Civil Rights Act, I wouldn't even be here. When my dad was able to get his degrees, move our family to the suburbs of Dallas, Texas, buy a home, that same opportunity wasn't available to Black Americans decades before. I know that that is privilege. That as I continue to live my life, now the question comes, what do I do with that privilege? Well, I'm here to say, I will leverage it. I will leverage it for the individuals that do not have it. And I will find ways to understand it more and more so I can make sure that I am actionable in my efforts to embrace it and leverage it. So we're going to move forward to myth 2. Myth 2 says that, Nosa, this is a tough topic. This equitable workplace. When we start talking about diversity in leadership. Because if I give you a seat at the table, what happens to my seat? Fair question. This is not a conversation that is zero-sum game. This is not a conversation that says that, hey, Nosa, I now can give you a seat at the table, and you know what? I'm gonna go sit in the back. Or better than that, I think it's, okay, I'm gonna give you a seat at the table, women, minorities, but now I don't know how my son's gonna get a seat at the table. This conversation has and will always be about creating a bigger table. Because diverse teams, they work better. They're more innovative. The statistics show it. And if we are committed to bringing forth diversity, if we are committed to providing seats for individuals that don't come from the same background as us, I know for a fact that that table will grow. And we will all be able to sit at it. So now to the question. Nosa, how does it feel to be stopped by the police? In December, after leaving a video shoot for our national sales meeting, I was rushing back to the city, my Ford F-150, trying to ensure that I was gonna make it to a lunch that I had with a client. and I was stopped by the police. It's my first time being stopped by the police in over 6 years. In the meantime, I've watched the videos of Black men that look like me that didn't make it out of that situation. And as I was prepping for the interaction with the police officer, as I was getting my registration out, as I was pulling out my insurance, as I was making sure that my license was ready so my hands could be on the steering wheel, I engaged with the cop. But first, I realized that there was a fear that set in. It was yes sir, no sir. It was a cordial conversation. It was a warning. It was you're free to go. But it was also a trauma-induced fear that set in because I can't unwatch the video of Philando Castile. I know that this has not always been good for people that look like me. And I came to the jarring realization that my degree from Auburn University doesn't matter. My fancy title at Baxter Healthcare doesn't matter. My suit doesn't matter. In that instance, I was still a Black man in America. And this conversation will never be about good cop, bad cop. We all have to understand that we can have a role in making this world a better place, in making our country a better place. So that fear doesn't have to set in to the heart of my son or his. So now to actionable solutions on how we can move forward. I fundamentally believe that if we are not aware of the power that we have, the power that we have to bring change to this country today, then we will not be able to do the work that it's going to take on this arduous journey towards a more equitable society. Yes, it is tough. Yes, there is a lot of noise. I know there's a lot going on. I know that there's all this thing, all the blinking. I know that the noise is loud. I know that so much is going on right now, but can you simplify your environment? And I think that that's exactly what we need to do right now. We need to simplify our environment. So I've got 2 things for each of us to do. First, become self-aware. Become self-aware of the opportunity, the generational defining opportunity that we each have to make an influence, to make change within our sphere. There's rooms, quite frankly, that I won't be able to be in. There's rooms, quite frankly, that this person would not be able to be in. But if we could all own our own room and ensure that when we leave that room is better, we will bring forth the change that we seek. So first, become self-aware of the power that you have. And second, when that awareness is there, I think it is incredibly important for us to now grow in the awareness of the cause. Like we talked about earlier, institutions of racism and poverty in this country have been built for over 400 years. We have an arduous journey ahead, but we cannot influence change on something we don't understand. This is not a battle for a few to fight. This is a battle for us all to fight. So as we look forward to how we can go about doing the work, I want to break down the dichotomy of sympathy versus empathy. Sympathy says that I see a problem that exists, and I hope that it changes. Empathy says that I see a problem, and I am willing to carry the burden along with that person or those people to ensure that it changes. When we talk about bringing forth social change, I want us all to recognize that yes, we have power and we can bring forth this change. Yes, we are better together, no matter what anybody says. And yes, I can be a part of doing the work. So as I move from sympathy to empathy, know that the tough conversations are going to occur. No one talks about what makes a good advocate for a cause. What makes a good advocate for a cause is empathy. And the only way to increase empathy is to increase your understanding. So I challenge you. How can you understand institutional racism and institutional poverty better? How can you engage in more conversations to hear and listen to someone else's story? How can you honor and take pride in the experiences of your fellow Black colleagues? And how can you champion them to ensure that we have diversity in every crevice of our marketplace? Thank you. The work is amongst us. What then is care? The word care finds its origin in the word kara, which means to lament, to mourn, to participate in suffering, to share in pain. To care is to cry out with those who are ill, confused, lonely, isolated, and forgotten, and to recognize their pains in our own heart. To care is to enter into the world of those who are only touched by hostile hands, to listen attentively to those whose words are only heard by greedy ears, and to speak gently with those who are used to harsh orders and impatient requests. To care is to be present to those who suffer and to stay present even when nothing can be done to change their situation. To care is to be compassionate, and so to form a community of people honestly facing the painful reality of our finite existence. To care is the most human gesture in which the courageous confession of our common brokenness does not lead to paralysis, but to community.